Misleading the subjects. The Humphrey research sociologists agree on the necessity to protect respondents when they applaud the professional manner in which Juha handled himself. Although it is considered acceptable for sociologists to do covert participant observation, studying in some situation without announcing that they are doing research, to deliberately misrepresent oneself is considered unethical. Sociologists who violate this norm can be embroiled in ethical controversy. Let's look at the case of Lord Humphreys, whose research forced sociologists to rethink and refine their ethical stance. Lord Humphreys, a classmate of mine at Washington University in St. Louis, was an Episcopal priest who decided to become a sociologist for his PhD dissertation. Humphreys, 1970, 1971, 1975, studied the social interaction in tea rooms, public restrooms, where some men go for quick, anonymous oral sex with other men. Humphreys found that some restrooms in Forest Park, just across from our campus, were tea rooms. He began a participant observation study by hanging around these restrooms. He found that in addition to the two men having sex, a third man called a watch queen served as a lookout for police and other unwelcome strangers. Humphreys took the role of watch queen, not only watching for strangers but also observing what the men did. He wrote field notes after the encounters. Humphreys decided what he wanted to learn about the regular lives of these men. For example, what was the significance of wedding rings that many of the men wore? He came up with an ingenious technique. Many of the men parked their cars near the tea rooms, and Humphreys recorded their license plate numbers. A friend in the St. Louis Police Department gave Humphreys each man's address. About a year later, Humphreys arranged for these men to be included in a medical survey conducted by some of the sociologists on our faculty. Disguising himself with a hairstyle and clothing, Humphreys visited the men's houses. He interviewed the men, supposedly for medical study. He found out that they led controversial lives. They voted and mowed their lawns and took their kids to Little League games. Many reported that their wives were not aroused sexually or were afraid of getting pregnant because of their religion did not allow them to use birth control. Humphrey concluded that heterosexual men were also using the tea rooms for a form of quick sex. This study stirred controversy among the sociologists, the non-sociologists alike. The sociologists criticized Humphreys, and a national columnist even wrote a scathing denunciation of sociological snoopers. Von Hoffman, 1970, one of our professors, even tried to get a court case loomed. Humphreys feared that his list of respondents might be subpoenaed. He gave me the list to take from Missouri to Illinois, where I began teaching. When he called and asked me to destroy it, I burned the list in my backyard. Was this research ethical? This question is not decided easily, although many sociologists sided with Humphreys, and his book reporting research won a highly acclaimed award. The criticism continued. At first, Humphreys defended his position vigorously, but 5 years later, in a second edition of his book in 1975, he stated that he should have identified himself as a researcher. Values in sociological research. Max Weber raised an issue that remains controversial among sociologists. He said that sociology should be value-free. By this, he meant that a sociologist values belief about what is good and desirable in life and the way the world ought to be should not affect the research. Weber wanted objectivity, total neutrality. He said that if values influence research, sociological findings will be biased. That bias has no place in research and is not a matter of debate. All sociologists agree that no one should distort data to make them fit preconceived ideas or personal values. It is equally clear, however, that because sociologists, like everyone else, are members of a particular society, and at a given point in history, they too are infused with values of all sorts. These values inevitably play a role in the topics we choose to research. For example, values are part of the reason that a sociologist chooses to do research on the mafia, while another turns to a sociological eye on kindergarten students. Because values can lead to unintended distortions in how we interpret our findings. Sociologists stress the need for replication, repeating a study in order to compare the new results with the original findings. If individual values have distorted research findings, replication by other sociologists should uncover the bias and correct it. Despite this consensus, however, values remain hotly debated in sociology. Homewood, 2007. A summarized figure 1.7, the disagreement that centers on the proper purposes and uses of sociology. Some sociologists say that the purpose of sociology is to advance understanding of social life. Sociologists should do research on whatever interests them and then use the best theory available to interpret their findings. Others are convinced that the purpose of research should be to help improve society, to do research that helps alleviate poverty, racism, sexism, and other forms of human exploitation. The debate illustrates, again, the tension of sociology we discussed earlier, the goal of analyzing social life versus the goal of social reform. In the midst of this controversy, sociologists study the major issues facing our society, from racism to sexism to the globalization of capitalism. These are all topics that sociologists study and that we explore in this book. Sociologists also examine face-to-face interaction, talking, touching, gestures. These two will be the subject of our discussion in the upcoming chapters. This beautiful variety in the sociology and the contrast of going from larger picture to the smaller one back again is part of the reason that sociology holds such fascination for me. I hope that you also find this variety appealing as you read the rest of this book. Thinking Critically, Chapter 1. Do you think that sociologists should try to reform society or to study it dispassionately? 2. Or of the 3 theoretical perspectives, which one would you like to use if you were a sociologist, and why? And 3. Considering the macro and micro approaches in sociology, which one do you think better explains social life and why?